Work is no longer confined to offices or 9-to-5 jobs. The gig economy and freelancing are rewriting the rules of employment, creating both opportunities and challenges. This session dives into the rise of independent work and how skills, flexibility, and digital platforms are driving this revolution. We are privileged to welcome a panel of thought leaders to guide this conversation. Joining us for this exciting conversation are Andrew Bateman, VP of Product and Enterprise, Freelancer.com, Dr. Christian Muek, Advisory Partner, Pivots, Ganesh Gopal, Co-founder, CDI, Neeti Sharma, CEO, Team Lease Digital, Sonia Swarup Choksky, Founder and CEO, Mash My Talent, and Vandana Vasudevan, Author and Visiting Fellow, Center for Social and Economic Progress. Moderating this panel discussion is Mr. Santosh Kurup, TBET Specialist. I request all the dignitaries to join us on stage.
A little more favoring the women's side, which is very good. In fact, we are sitting in a stage where the women population is slightly higher than the men's population. Apart from a lot of other HDI parameters, we lead the pack when it comes to diversity as well. I am indeed honored and it is a pleasure to host this wonderful panel of real great experts. I think we have people who have worked in government, to industry, to academia, to policy, to socio-economic activities, to talent management, author. I mean, I don't want to take a lot of time in explaining all those things. As we go, I will probably introduce each one of you with their specialty a little bit more. But for now, we will start off with this panel. Before that, I also wanted to thank the Skill Kerala Global Summit team for organizing this. It's part of a Vijnana Kerala initiative. In fact, I was in a very, very small way associated with the Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission when the strategy for Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission was being drawn. I think Mr. Ganesh was part of it as well, in which we did talk about multiple domains and areas of making Kerala a knowledge society led through what we call it as a knowledge economy. So that was the fundamental behind this concept of knowledge economy mission. And subsequently, a lot of initiatives came in for enhancing that. In fact, in that strategy paper itself, the strategy paper was drawn around five to 6 years ago now. Even there itself, we had an interesting topic around this. So the concept was that if Kerala were to become a knowledge society driven through a knowledge economy, one of the things was that Kerala has to have, or traditionally Kerala has always been exporting manpower, okay? In fact, we have a joke that when the first person landed in moon, there was a person standing behind and saying, "Hey, chai veno," which was a Malayali, right? So we see Malayalis everywhere. So we survived because of the talent. So right in the 60s, we had a huge outflow into the Middle East countries, plumbers, electricians and so forth. Even now, our nurses are considered to be one of the best in the world. So these are all alluding to the kind of knowledge economical activity that was already there, even before it was formalized. But as part of this knowledge mission, when we formalized it, and that was the time when the country was also coming out of COVID, okay, it was during 2020, 2021. And there was a slogan that we said was, if 60s is when Kerala exported manpower or exported talent, now is a time when we wanted to export work, not necessarily people, right? So that is the definition that we gave for the concept of gig economy that time. In fact, a lot of water has flown down the bridge, and when we look at how the knowledge economy or gig economy has fared, I was checking at some of the statistics. I think India has done reasonably well in that. We are right now around 12 million knowledge workers out there in the country. We are We are actually, when it comes to online-based gig economy, where we are exporting work, we are standing number 7 in the world. I'm not sure whether these are scientifically approved, but this is something that we get when we research it out through our mechanism. So, which is phenomenal in itself, and we are bound to double this number in the next 5 years. Maybe the ST members in the panel can actually give more insights into it, but when Mighty conducted this study, they projected this as the number. So that's the kind of statistics that we are looking at, and we are talking about around 23 million people working in the gig space by 2030. Now, I remembered my friend who was moderating the previous session used to give a beautiful example. This gig economy, again, was not something new. It always existed, and he used to always ask the audience a question: whom do you think is the best earning gig economist in our state? And the interesting answer is it was either Mammootty or Mohanlal during our time, because they are actually freelancers. They work on projects and then they earn and go. That's freelancing, or that's gig. So there are a lot of terminologies that may sound new, but the concept was always the same. So with that as a context, I was just doing a bit of a context setting for this. We today have some of the fantastic people around us here. So let me quickly do a round of introduction. We have on my immediate left is Ms. Vandana Vasudevan. I think she's a PhD in management, if I understand it right. PhD in urban development. She's a IIM Ahmedabad alumnus, and she showed me a book that she authored, which sounded very interesting. It is called OTP, please. Okay. So it is indeed an honor, Ms. Vandana, to be a part of it. She hails from Hyderabad, though she said she grew up in North, but she is a Tamilian, a truly Indian in that way, very interesting. So on behalf of all of you, let us warmly welcome Ms. Vandana. Then we have Ms. Sonia, who is a founder and CEO of Match My Talent. In fact, while we were sitting there, since we don't know each other, we just put in the group, I am sitting in this corner of the world or in the corner of this hall, and after some time Sonia walks in and say hello, and we get introduced, and then she whispers to me saying that, see, everybody talks about a lot of big stuff, but at the end of it they talk about arts, science, social and things like that. Then I looked at, yeah, exactly, because she does that. Her passion is about science, arts and art forms. She travels a lot, and in that process she also has created something very unique called Match My Talent. In the space of publications and arts, we will hear performing arts. We will, in fact, hear a lot about it. I do have my friend Ria sitting there. Performing arts is one of the first gig economy thing that we wanted to pick it up. You know what, when we are talking about the strategy, this was one thing that we wanted to pick it up. So it is so nice of meeting you. So on behalf of all you, let us welcome Ms. Sonia. Ms. Neeti Sharma, she is the CEO of Team Lease, which I don't think you need much of an introduction. It has grown as a very powerful brand when it comes to bridging the gap between academia and industry. As I understand from your profile, I think you have got around 30 plus years of overall experience working in government, in social sphere, academia and industry, which even though it is not that high, I too have some small pieces of my connects in academia, industry and government. So, I think she is also very passionate about working with the young talent, and that is why Team Lease has grown so substantially under her leadership. So on behalf of all of you, let us welcome Ms. Neeti. And we have, last but not the least, when I heard the name Mr. Ganesh Gopal, I thought he's a very old person, and the title also, he has worked as a specialist in the cooperative industry. it gives a feeling of a reasonably old person. But today when I saw him, he said, "Hi, I'm Gopal, Ganesh, I'm Ganesh Gopal." I thought, I am a part of your panel. Oh, okay. A very young, dynamic gentleman who is also the co-founder of CDI. They have worked extensively in the workers' cooperative, which is something which is very, very close to Kerala. Again, if you look at the history of Kerala, Kerala has created one of the finest workers' cooperatives, starting from the Indian Coffee House, which is based out of Thrissur, which was one of the biggest momentum during those times, started in the 60s or 50s, I mean, you may be better off saying that, to one of the largest workers cooperative led corporate, which is ULCC. I think you will have a lot of stories to talk about some of those working models out here. So again, on behalf of all of you, may I kindly welcome Mr. Ganesh Gopal to this workshop. All right, now that we have done my name is Santosh. I take this job very often, and that's why my friends like Riaz call me to be the moderator. I think I might have done hundreds of moderation. I call myself as a moderator Tolilali. In Malayalam, Tolilali means laborer. Another gig job, yeah. The interesting thing is, I like it because people like Riaz know my capability, because I can't be put on the subject matter expert, so I will be put on the moderator side asking questions and then looking at the time and things like that. So, yeah, but to be fair, I think these kind of sessions, working closely with leads like you, gives a lot of insights for people like us, which we try to drive it into the system. So that way I am also honored and privileged to be here. Now, we all talk about, when we go into especially to the youths, when we ask, what do you want to do after your studies, we keep hearing about, okay, I wanted a job, or I wanted to be an entrepreneur. To be fair, I have, in my last 10 years of my interactions with the academic world, I have never heard of any student coming up and saying, I want to do gig, or I wanted to be a freelancer. Okay, so that's the state of affairs at the source level. Okay, now I wanted to open up, perhaps Neeti, you may want to start off with, since you are doing this work in the team leads connected to academia and industry. How is it looking like from a standpoint of industry as well as from an academia perspective? How is freelance looking like as a prospective opportunity for the upcoming, freelancers? How do we make it, or are there things that are very attractive for people who are wanting to get into such opportunities? I know it is slightly outside of things that we discussed. We did have some questions, but I love to ask out of syllabus questions also, okay? So Neeti, you want to start.
Sure, thank you and good afternoon everyone. I think a very pertinent question, because the definition of gig does not fall under the ambit of labor laws as of now. Okay, so if you say what are the prospects, unless and until it's legalized, there's a compliance and governance under it, the prospect will all be varied. Okay, as an artist, she'll probably find many people willing to do jobs, but I'm sure they all have day jobs, because the day job is giving them stability, but the gig is actually giving them to follow their passion. And I've seen many engineers who've kind of worked for about 10, 12 years, then left their core job, and now they're following their passion in a gig format. But that's because they have financial stability. So unless and until we have governance and compliance and laws around the gig workforce, this is going to be as sporadic as it is for now. Having said that, the government of India is, and lots of states are actually calling out gig policies. I think giving them social security will be the first step, and if the state of Kerala kind of takes that lead, they'll be able to convert a lot of informal employment into formal employment. Even though it's gig, it's exciting, trust me. And who are the people who are taking gig work right now? I think a lot of digital marketing folks, white collar jobs, knowledge worker jobs are actually taking gig options, okay? For two reasons. One, they don't have to worry about sustainability, which means they come from families like ours saying, hey, you know what, I am not worried about where my next meal is going to come from. So I can dabble into 2, 3 projects and then decide what I want to do. I think great way to learn on the job and then decide your career roadmap. Okay. For youngsters, I think the new education policy calls out integration of apprenticeships or learning on the job along with their core curriculum. If the gig option can give them that headway, I think it's going to be great. But like I called out, unless it's legalized, it's going to be all over the place.
Very, very interesting perspective. I think uh, this is an interesting, what you call paradox I see, because when we deal with youngsters for now, they don't have at least people like me are a little bit older generation. So we used to have this loyalty factor, and working for companies for long, working for brands which stands for values. And young generation don't really bother that much about it. They bother about what is it for me is the kind of thing. But I never thought that, okay, at the back of the mind, they still always talk about, in Kerala especially, when we ask for what type of job, many of them still prefers government jobs. That maybe because of the point of what you mentioned about stability and things like that. So, okay, I'll park that point there. We'll come around. Hopefully, a couple of rounds we may get. Vandana, you mentioned in our discussion internally, you mentioned that you may be able to take up a point about the challenges and risks that you see, because you work across policymakers and things like that. We'll talk from the policy side a little bit, but what do you see as the practical challenges and issues when it comes to gig type of work, both for the workers as well as for the work producers or work providers? Can you elaborate a little
Right.
bit on that?
So I must start by stepping back a little and understanding what gig is, because I come from a little bit on the academic side. So this guy Reid Hoffman, who invented LinkedIn, he said in 1997 that we are going to have social media. So his predictions are bankable. So he has looked at the crystal ball of work and said that by 2034, the 9 to 5 job will vanish. And everybody is going to be working across industries and across companies. So gig, therefore, is here to stay. That's the first thing. Now, although it provides a fair amount of, flexibility, but there is also equal or more amount of uncertainty that we have to deal with. So, therefore, having said that, there are 2 kinds of gig jobs. So we're all saying gig in a generic way, but there are 2 kinds of gig jobs as the ILO defines. One is the location-based gig job, where you see people running around delivering goods and services. That's the visible gig job of the Swiggy worker and the Uber driver and all. The other is the online gig job, where people are doing, graphic designing or other kinds of work, which is performed at home, right? So both these kind of jobs, we obviously don't want to be a state of delivery boys. So the attempt will be to try and skill the youth of Kerala to do, I guess, the online jobs. So, however, even in that, there are several risks that have been studied. So, minimum wage is one, paid leave is one, and the number of hours to be worked to deliver something, is something which is where the employee has very little flexibility, although it is shown as though it is a flexible job. But all research reveals that he's working under a fair amount of constraints to deliver that online, whatever assignment there is. So, the most important part is that there is no growth. So, you are hired by a tech platform, which is the mediator, which could be Upwork or Fiverr or whatever it is. But what do you do after that? Your salary remains fixed. You, as the company grows, it's not going to say, hey, you contributed to my growth, so here is a bonus for you. That's not happening either. So after a point, there is the worker hits a wall, and feels nothing about belonging to a particular organization. So a good job goes beyond paycheck, goes beyond schedule and things like that. A good job is one where you're seen and valued for who you are. That the invisibility of the online work makes that a huge challenge. So really our challenge is to how to give that flexibility while reducing uncertainty, reducing that unstable feeling that the worker has. Like Neeti said, this is not something we have thought through too much. The government needs to think through, policy needs to, we have to do a lot more debating on this to, to draw the contours of what is a gig job and what is online gig.
Okay, thank you. We are really having a problem in listening, but I think I got a lot of things that you mentioned, ma'am, about the minimum wages, the paid leaves, number of hours, the kind of non-team work, and interestingly, yeah, if there is no belonging for both the worker side as well as the work provider side about, okay, I belong to this entity, nor the work providers will see, okay, they belong to me as an extended organization. That is also missing in many cases, okay. Let me come to Ms. Sonia. I think you work in the field which is also, as I said, this is an area which is long ago itself gigified, if I may say, even though it is in the very informal setup. But what is your experience about the kind of gig jobs that are in the specific sector of arts, performing arts, or in general arts and associated areas? And what do you see as the kind of prospect of that, since you travel a bit to the Kerala side also, do you see a good prospect of that for Kerala if we were to, from a government side, as I was mentioning, from a government side, we are strongly trying to encourage gig economy. So, and we felt that performing art is one area which government should support. So from that context, do you see a prospect for government, and if so, what are the couple of advices that you may have? I know it is a long question.
I'll try. Thank you. So when it comes to any form of art and performing arts, we have always been freelancers. This is one most oldest traditional profession, so to say, which never had stability, ever. And it is also the oldest profession. So now what we call as gig economy is new, right? So, we saying that the laws have to be laid is well in time, but art culture, performing arts, is as old as all of us, the mankind, and no rules have been laid so far, right? So while it's great that we're talking about it, but I'll also like to ping in here to say that we keep talking about the labor laws, policies and stuff, but somewhere as government and as people in position and authority, we always take care of societies and communities which have a very predictable future. And some of these professions, let's say a medical college, would be constructed, would be delivered well in time, and doctors will be out and churning, But how many performing arts colleges exist? And the question could be, thank you, the audio is great now. The problem could be if there are not too many performing artists, then fair enough, you don't invest into that. But each of us would know one performing artist around us, and more would become if that could be a source of revenue. Like, like rightly said, that most performing artists have a day job and then they do the gig to make the passion meet. Is it an ideal situation? Not at all. It's a make in between, because artists are driven by passion, cannot cut it off. So you work evenings and nights to make that passion come true, but you have a day job to run the house, I wonder how many people do 2 jobs in any other profession, right? And these are both jobs. You know, somebody needs to be happy to pay you the money, right? So even if it's passion, you do it for an audience which is very subjective, very contextual. If they don't like it, you're not called out the next time. So I'll also like to bring in an aspect that this space, the artist space, the artist is in the job market every next day. You know, this is talking about stability, none whatsoever. So if I'm here performing, I don't have a gig or a job tomorrow. I need to figure it out as raw and as procrastinately as the previous one, right? So it's that unstable, right? And no platform, no government, no state government, no central government has been able to do this, crack it. When I studied, I'm a freelancer since 25 years as a filmmaker, you know. So I graduated in the year 2000 and did not, and as a film person, there were no jobs. It was only about one channel to another channel or one production house to production. So in 2025, it's 25 years of freelancing. And at some point of time, I chose to not remain a freelancer, but create and solve for the other freelancers, which is the performing artist. The problem that Kerala could definitely solve in this space is because art, culture, heritage has been the strongest. It's one of the states that has always respected it, has it in the family tradition. Everybody practices something. So we don't need to make YouTubers and influencers here, but it's real art that forms here. But what hasn't been happening, even from the government level, and I've been talking to the Kerala the skill commission here very closely, but what's not happening, neither with Kerala nor with any other state, is to look at this, that the artist may belong to this state, but their work could actually come from rest of the world, rest of the country. What we are, as a government body, what is constantly happening is that we want to build our own website. We want to build our own database. Build it. Who stops? But hasn't gotten built. Secondly, the job market, the artists are here, but the people who want those artists and the ones who will really appreciate it are the ones who are sitting in a Jammu or a Delhi or a Bombay, who actually do not know many Mohiniyattam artists, you know, who don't know Kalarupettu associations. They are the ones who really respect this connection. But because we are thinking very, very locally, we are not looking at where does the revenue really come from. So that's something that needs to be at the decision makers' purview more closely, I believe.
Very well said, Sonia. In fact, I may add a bit of a personal example. I come from one of the temple towns in Kerala. And many of the performance arts, if you see, at least in Kerala, is in and around temples, there are a lot of performing arts. And unfortunately, when it comes to performance in temples, again, the artists won't get paid many a times. It's an offering to the god and things like that. So there is also an underpayment of such wonderful arts that comes in. And many of them, even after that, they spend a lot of time performing in those areas. So very, very, I think.
And also the thing to be seen in that is that even if they are praying to the deity, and even if the prayer, isn't there an audience otherwise? You have seen it. You're neither the god nor the artist, right? You've enjoyed that art, right? So all of us as a society enjoy that, but we don't contribute to creating stability for that community.
Okay, well said. Okay, Ganesh, going to you. I think that's the next area that we felt, again from a Kerala perspective, can we at some point in time create worker cooperatives to address some of the challenges we already discussed about building some sort of safety nets for the worker community, be on the stability, on the continuity and so forth. You have worked extensively in the cooperative sector. What are your learnings from that sector, and are there any lessons that you wanted to highlight to this audience?
Thank you, Sanjoshi, for bringing about the appropriate setting and the connection between the emerging freelance global gig economy and the context of skilling in Kerala. I think I might not be the most popular person in the room because I might be saying a lot of contrarian opinions to most of our colleagues here in the freelance gig space. I also feel that I'm a misfit here, not because I'm in the presence of distinguished, experienced women, but rather very senior colleagues who have worked in the gig platform space, or rather researching and further working on mobilizing, connecting people. This is a space that I'm very critical about. And ironically, this is a space that has very low representation of women in STEM. And my co-founder from Tinkerhub, Meher, is here. So last year we did a STEM, Women in Tech workshop, and it's awful how, despite what Santosh ji mentioned, the sex ratio is favorable in Kerala, but the participation is so low in terms of women in STEM. Anyway, coming back to the point. So a few unpopular opinions on this front. Vandana already mentioned that the definition of gig according to ILO, platform-based and location-based. And you also mentioned Mohanlal Mammootty, maybe a neurosurgeon or a chartered accountant. All of this falls in gig. But for the purpose of our discussion here, I think today we are looking at mostly knowledge workers and predominantly that area. So if we look at this space, and take away this entire group of blue-collar, grey-collar workers who we already know are being exploited and marginalized to the core. So unfortunately, from the waking moment in the morning, we are dependent on the Ubers or the Swiggis of the world for each and every need of our daily life. But we neglect the gig workers who are involved in this whole aspect until the moment somebody in Hyderabad decides to, switch off the AC for a no AC campaign, or, protesting against Uber and Ola, or we read in the newspapers saying a competition commission order has come out saying that, hey, Uber and Ola have been cheating you guys based on whether you're using Android and or iOS. So keeping all of this aside, looking only at knowledge economy, I think a lot of systemic vulnerabilities need to be addressed. And like an esteemed colleague earlier mentioned, the law is still silent on this. And in this vacuum, gig, platform, freelance platforms thrive. There are a lot of fair platforms, there are a lot of fair work principles out there, and I'm sure you guys are promoters of that, which is why you are vocal proponents and speaking about it here. But majority, if you look at the number, we speak about 7.7 million gig workers today in India, according to Niti Aayog, which is also a conservative estimate, and we expect that to go 3 or 4-fold to 23.5 million by the end of the decade. So even today, when we look at 11 major platforms in the country, we're looking at 30 lakh people working there. How many of these people have any kind of social nets, any kind of insurance, any kind of, forget pensions, even a contingency fund? So I just finished a discussion and a consultation with Niti Aayog, a few of these people, where a gig worker and a representative was crying because just the day before that, somebody had committed suicide because of extreme pressure and harassment from the side of the gig platform. Who is going to answer this? So, in the absence of a unorganized or a organized collective bargaining mechanism, especially for a platform-based work, which you have workers across the board, across the place, not in a particular constituency, not good enough or organized enough to form a vote bank, who is going to care about you? So, like I said, I'm going to say a few unpopular opinions, and I'm also going to introduce one specific thing to answer your question. There is an emerging movement in the world called platform cooperatives. So this is a new and emerging area. I wouldn't say successful, but well proliferating across the global south and the global north. So when restaurant workers or taxi drivers or home care, blue collar workers come together and own their own version of Uber or Swiggy, and they have ownership, and the proceeds and accruals come back to them. They together sit and decide what should be the commission charged, what should be the fair work principles applied, what should be the social security net there. I think that is the only way forward. So this is just one part. On the other hand, in the specific context of Kerala, a lot much more to speak about, because here also, like you said, we export people rather than commodities and products. In a state that is starved of industry and manufacturing, we are highly dependent on what we are good at, whether it be banana chips or talking in English or coding in IT. So let's work on mobilizing these skills into platform cooperatives is one appeal that we have made in front of the government of Kerala, the knowledge mission. And like you already know, in the strategy paper it's rightly mentioned that the target of nearly 4,000 people, or 10% of the total target, should ideally be mobilized into platform cooperatives. That is only the way forward, especially in a socialist, humanity prioritizing economy like Kerala. And I think that should be spoken a lot more about. This model is not without its own limitations, it is not without its own problems, but towards that utopia, we should look at a normative framework so that at least halfway, we can create fairer platforms, fairer methodologies, which do not depend solely on the exploitation of people, legal vacuums, and probably get lost in the nuances of international law.
Literally looking at your lip movement and trying to figure out, Ganesh. But I think a couple of points I got it. I think the platform collective is a initiative that seems to be very interesting, and collective bargaining power is something that may help address some of the vulnerabilities that we have. I have a common question, maybe each one of you being in the field, I'm just asking this. Are there any successful examples of how it is working? Are there any successful examples of how it is working, which could perhaps be adopted by the Kerala government while we are trying to build a gig economy platform and the gig economy policies and processes around it? Maybe you wanted to start, ma'am.
So before I came here, I reread the international cases where people have tried to, where each country has tried to solve the issue of, is the gig worker an independent person or is the gig worker an employee? So there are arguments for and against that. So the independent, some countries have ruled that the gig worker is an independent service provider, because he's not really controlled by the company, and he doesn't really have any, if the company does well, he's not going to get some profit out of it. So he functions and he's free to work for many companies and many industries. So he's independent. So Canada, UK have ruled in this manner. Certain other countries like Brazil, Spain, etc. have said that no, the gig worker is indeed an employee, because although you are saying that he's flexible, he's governed by the algorithm. So the Uber driver doesn't have a choice in which customer he accepts. He has very limited choice. He cannot keep cancelling, because then the company will question him. So he cannot decide whom he is serving and at what rate he is serving. He is not fixing the price. So on all these accounts, the gig worker is actually very much an employee. So there is no international consensus on this. However, what stand you take determines the social security and the protection that the gig worker will get. And since this panel is pretty much focused on the knowledge worker rather than the delivery worker, even within that, in fact, the delivery worker has some representation. There are some unions and he's out there on the road, he's more visible. The knowledge worker who is online, in fact, is far more isolated. They have no connection with each other. One graphic designer working in the darkness of her room doesn't know the other who's working somewhere else. So it's a disconnected community. that has no representation, no leadership, no one knows each other. In fact, their situation is a little more complicated. In that context, I think one recommendation I read somewhere was that there should be work inspections on what is it that these people are doing, and there are also some safeguards that Kerala, states like Kerala, which are interested in moving ahead with this kind of work structure, should look at. So, for example, in Africa, it was found that some of the workers do the worst kind of online jobs. So, for example, weeding out all the stuff that children shouldn't see. So, there are a bunch of people in Africa who are being paid to see the worst kind of offensive videos and weed them out. So, those are jobs that we should guard against, right? And the way the work is distributed internationally is that this kind of job invariably comes to the poorer countries, of course. So we have to guard against those kind of things. So it is behind the dazzle of gig work and global work, there are many things that need to be we need to take care of before we jump into it and complicate our already complex work structure.
Sonia, any successful examples?
Yeah, UK has. So UK, in my space, in performing arts, UK always had public and private partnership. So back much earlier when internet started, they created one website which had the system of artists registering themselves. On the other side, the business, so there they have a good system of managers, which we just don't have in India. But they have the system where every artist has to sign up with a manager. And the work will only come to the manager. And then the manager takes it to the artist, In India, we have this in a very, very messy way, definitely not regulated. But there, from time immemorial, they've had this structure, one website. Who owns it? Definitely not the government. But some tech company started the website, government plugged and played in. Okay, what did they plug in and play in? That all the policies, all the rules and regulations flew through that website. So the money is paid to the website, is channelized to the artist. The discovery happens from there. And they have controlled that there is no other one coming in. And I have been investigating and of course been in great touch with them. There is no other narrative there. There is nothing else. It's not like some minister owns that platform and hence. No, it's not. It is just that something got created, the intent was communicated, it was given time to nurture and grow. They also took it to their promise and has kept it. And there are other services which have come up. And now, of course, like with internet, of course, some things are coming up. But now they have 20 years behind them. So the kind of community, we talk about community today, the community is the strength, community is the strength. But communities take years to form because it's all about trust. And trust, I believe, is really broken in all sectors. So anybody, government or platform, the first and foremost that we have to do is build that trust. We cannot expect the gig workers to give in anything or the industry to give in anything unless we have created those channels of bringing the trust back, right? So, of all the places, UK, I believe, has like nailed it forever. The other example I'll give is Rio. Rio as a cultural capital, okay? It's a very small place, very, very small, But the one festival, the Rio Festival, employs all the artists for the year as a form of their social security. Okay, so they assume that apart from the Rio Festival, there will be no other source of earning, but they want to make sure that the artists don't give up on that. So a basic minimum wage is given to the artist They have certain rules, of course, you know. You need to be in the business for a while. There is a certain kind of a qualitative measure, but that's also played out of integrity and now not out of who knows who. So that's another thing in India and in many other countries. These channels don't get sustained because it boils down to who knows who, and so your averages come out better than. So the transparency is intact, and artists are artists throughout the year.
Okay. Neeti.
Amazing. You know, about a decade ago, if I would be sitting in a skills conference like this. My rant was that as general public, we were refusing to pay for higher skills. Right? Whether it is blue collar, you know, the service providers that come home, or for knowledge workers. Okay. I think the last decade has changed that in India, at least for the entry level blue collar workforce, by a platform called Urban Company. We are all willing to pay the skilled plumber 5 times more than what a local plumber would come home and do, only because we are recognizing he or she has the skill. I think that platform has brought a large part of gig workers together, and not just blue collared. They've got white collared. There are tutors on the platform. There are guitar teachers. There are musicians. There are language tutors on the platform. I think it's a great way to recognize skill and ensure that they get the prize. Urban Company specifically is also tied up to, let's say, ASAP in Kerala, the Skills Corporation, right? Where they ensure that people get certain skills and then they get jobs. It's a good start for us because it's one platform. Having said that, there are many other platforms. Let's say there's a content writing platform. Like she said, you know, the manager gets the role and then it goes to 5 other people. There are smaller platforms, but it's not resolving a scale problem. I think we have to do much more than what is happening right now. Like her platform, I'm sure it's a great platform to get the right kind of performing arts talent, right? But we wouldn't have heard of it if we weren't talking to her today. So how do we take that at a national level, at a state level, and ensure that as many people that we need in terms of skills, there are those many gig options available. You know, I come from Bangalore, tech startup capital. Monday to Sunday, all cafes are full with individual people sitting in front of the laptops, all MacBooks. 5 times I've gone and asked them, what do you do? They're all gig workers. So they've got a project, they're very happy, they're out of their PGs and their small rooms and they're coming out and doing work, right? I think there is enough and more talent, right? People are wanting the flexibility. So even though there are challenges, and as an employer, I would say, oh, I don't get collaboration, I don't see their faces. I think a large part of our younger population actually is okay without seeing somebody's face. So can we actually recognize their talent and give them the potential? We'll need a lot more platforms, like you said, cooperative platforms, like she said what UK is doing. But I would say Urban Company is a good start. We need many more of those around us.
All right, Ganesh.
Again, not to pile on to what colleagues had already mentioned, but bringing another contrarian perspective. All of these platforms, including Urban Company, thrive in this vacuum and continue to exploit. And the systemic issues are not addressed. So, like you said, what are the good examples? There are several good examples across the world. Mandra already mentioned about the various perspectives and legal positions in many of these countries, and the enduring trauma that people have to go through. I mean, Africa, content producers or content reviewers have now, just last year, have formed a platform cooperative. Because the trauma that they have to go through just sitting and watching these horrible videos on behalf of somebody else sitting on some other part of the world. So just to bring about a few examples, you know, this iStock photo, when we look at free photos online, I realized maybe a little farther is better. So iStock photo, the alternative, a couple of photographers in Canada came together and formed something called Stocksky, the exact equivalent of this. So iStock photo probably, they'll be charged $10 for a photo and $8 will go to the platform. Here is ulta. $2 might go to the platform, but $8 will go to the actual photographer or the artist. Secondly, one good example for a lot of our world's problems or life's problems in Kerala, in a very socialistic format, smart.coop or smart cooperative. It's a platform that's been around for a while, operates out of 9 European countries. And what they do is gig workers sign up with them. The contracts on the invoice is done through Smart to the client. Let's say I am working for Santosh, but Sonia is the platform or Smart. I sign up with Sonia. Sonia gives the invoicing to you. I pay Sonia 6% annually of my total money I make out of the platform. But the benefit they offer is, even if Santosh doesn't pay tomorrow, Sonia will pay me. So there's an insurance or a ensuring mechanism that payment is done. And within 9 to 11 days, regardless of what the legal issues are between Sonia and Santosh, or Santosh and Ganesh, all of these nuances. So basically, it's not going to get lost in the nuances of lack of redressals and nuances of international law. That is the other problem, right? The platform is sitting somewhere in the US, the gig worker is sitting somewhere in Africa or India, and the client is probably sitting somewhere in Europe. So all of those issues are ameliorated. Nearly 35,000 workers in these 9 countries work through this. And another brilliant thing is social security is ensured, very streamlined. That I cannot easily say that it's a plug-in and thing in India or Kerala, because all those countries, including Scandinavia, already have a very robust and well-flowing social security mechanism. So that's there. Coming to the arts, Doc Servicey is another platform that came up in the 1990s, and I think artists. Earlier we had temples and maharajas and British Raj to give patronage. Nowadays, this matchmaking happens very specifically through this particular platform cooperative. I'm sure this might be of interest to you also. But in the absence of such patronage, they themselves look at ways to mobilize money. They look at outlets. Even because, like you said, artists are fundamentally driven by passion, and in the absence of patronage and other things, where do you look at? So these people come together and they look at common issues that they face. I mean, even filmmakers. Nowadays, when we say newspaper is a, print media is a dying breed and all of that. So independent filmmaking is also a dying breed. So Amman Filmmakers Cooperative or New York Filmmakers Cooperative, people come together using this model. But at the same time, Santosh ji, a disclaimer that I say is, in a state like Kerala, in a country like India, cooperatives like the first hello that I gave you, I have a perception bias from your end or from everybody's end. Cooperatives is an old man's game and probably a corrupt, politicized game. So let's forget about cooperatives in the legal form. Let us take the values of cooperation. There are 7 values that cooperatives are governed by. If we can just apply these few values, let's say 4 or 5, forget 3 of them. Let's say 4 or 5 are applied to any of these forms or any of these platforms, then I'm sure we'll have a better, fairer workplace. We will be aligned with the ILO's decent work guidelines and also address all the challenges that we have in the future of work in Industrial Revolution 5.0 or 6.0, wherever that we agree that we are currently at. So I think these are my few examples that I've personally had an experience interacting with. And why I've known this thing is I've had the opportunity or the pleasure to be associated with something called the Platform Cooperative Consortium at the New School University in New York. And this PCC is part of the New School Institute for Cooperative Digital Economy. And they are doing a lot of work, again, pro bono work to improve the lives of people through platform cooperativism. In fact, KDISC, I'm saying this specifically because KDISC was one of the partners who organized the last year, I think 2023 PCC conference in Kovala. So a lot of beautiful conversations happened. Isaac sir, Uni sir, they all together unveiled the Trivandrum Declaration for a future, a fairer future of work through the platform economy, through, models such as platform cooperativism. And I would encourage all colleagues to actually check that out because, that is a sort of a Magna Carta, at least for people in this area, that says, what is your normative framework. I'm not saying that everything is adaptable or, easily copyable, but, if we aspire towards that, models like Smart or Doc Servicey or many stock skis can come up in a state like Kerala where we claim to be 100% digitally literate.
Okay, thank you, Ganesh. I think flipping the model where you give more weightage to the artist or the gig workers and lesser commission into the platform was one thing I could hear. The other one is the contractual arrangement itself is getting flipped, and assuring a kind of a social security is another thing that I heard, because the sound is really bad. So I'm trying to repeat so that whether I got it right is what the objective is. By the way, when I said I thought you are a elderly person, I thought you are not from a cooperative as in the corrupt practices. I meant more wiser person like gray hair. Yeah, that's 1 minute question. Okay, I call it as a rapid round. We always have this debate about where do you call somebody as a gray collar or a white collar. I'll give you a small example to trigger your thought. Driver, you call him or her as perhaps a blue or a gray collar. Pilot, do you call him or her as a blue collar or a white collar? That's where the debate started. Okay. So according to you, I mean, on a serious note, according to you, the reason why I thought of asking this is, according to you, two questions. One is this categorization based on types of job is also evolving? One. Second is that going to be helpful for the boosting of this economy? Okay, let me start with you.
I'm not sure that is really evolving, because, for example, even if a plumber, I'm thinking as I speak, so I mean, I have not thought about this earlier, your question, but I'm saying that even if a plumber or carpenter or beautician comes through urban platform and I have booked that person through an app which represents for us technological advancement and modernity, that person is still a plumber and a carpenter. So I think that and Indian society being as feudal as it is, people's treatment of that person doesn't really change. I mean, it's how you would treat that gig worker plumber too, though they would pay the higher wages which you pointed out. And that is something that urban company would have helped to raise the bar. Yeah, but I think I'm not sure. I'll tell you one example. I've written this book, OTP Please. It released in July. So there was one reader who really loved it, and she put a long LinkedIn post. And the reason she loved it is because whatever I had said about the exploitation of such workers, she saw in a personal experience. So she said, for example, that she had called an urban company person, and she, a beautician, and that lady told her pretty much most of the things that I had written in my book, which is about how suddenly their ID can get blocked because a customer can say that, no, she didn't do her job well. And immediately her ID will be blocked, and there is no appeal, no grievance redressal, etc. And then, strangely, a lot of times somebody books an urban company beautician, a masseuse, for example, and if when that person appears at the doorstep, she finds that the client is the man, the husband of the person who booked, and then she gets all perturbed that I didn't expect this, so I'm obviously not going to do this. So, and then that client, that order is lost. And then, so there were many, and then many people wrote after that saying, I offered lunch to an urban company person, and she was really scared of accepting it because she said, don't tell the app kind of thing. So there is a sense of constantly being watched, and I absolutely disagree that our attitude towards them has changed at all just because we are calling them through an app. Blue collar workers are blue collar workers, and the people who are doing in the knowledge economy supposedly and doing other kinds of work which involves a laptop are definitely white collar workers. I think it'll be a while before that changes.
I was asking, what category, as you said category, will we put the YouTubers and the influencers in? We haven't put a color to it. Achha, they are entrepreneurs. They're not workers, they're entrepreneurs. Right, right. So they're self, yeah, they're doing things on their own. So the perception part, I believe, the the professionals create their own perception, right? So the influencer has to be influencing enough, otherwise they aren't an influencer if they're not able to position themselves as premium, right? But also the audience makes a huge thing here, that most doctors are not airy about themselves, but we give them a lot more respect and admiration as a doctor, but we don't do the same to the nurses as much, while it's a very similar work there, right? So these new categories, some categories like what Vanna said, our perception hasn't changed because their giveaway is no different, it's just the channel. But there are new categories definitely emerging, like YouTubers and influencers, to say the few, who are clearly entrepreneurs and they're crafting a niche for themselves and demanding a respect, but they are not making money. You know, so it's a perception game. The money is still being made by the platform way more than the creator themselves.
By sheer definition, okay, it's about the role they play and not the skills they bring to the table. That's how the blue, grey, and the white collared are actually defined even today. Because if I'm calling out a blue collar, let's say an electrician, that person has to be much more skilled than probably a grey collared worker. Right? Today, everyone needs digital skills, and they are not pure play, just use an Excel or a Word or whatever. Even your Uber driver knows how to operate the app. Even your delivery executive knows how to operate an app, as well as a AI/ML coder. Right? So I think it's not about the skills you bring to the table anymore, but it's the kind of role that you are doing. Okay, the perception about a blue collared versus a white collared, I think traditionally it was if you're a graduate, you're better off than the others. Right now, I think that boundaries are clearly going away. Okay, even a 12th standard, like she said, a YouTuber or a social media influencer, I think some of them make very good money. Right? Yeah, some, that's what I'm saying. But a postgraduate or an engineering graduate only makes 4 to 5 lakhs as a starting salary. Right? So it's not about the money or the skill you're bringing, it's about the type of job that you're doing. My sense is over a period of time, we will have to evolve as a society and give respect to the talent that people bring in and not that the job that you do, which happens in a lot of developed countries, but not in us.
Very interesting perspectives, but I'll just stick to the answer. I think it is basically skill level. So, blue collar, what is the task that is in front of you? And I mean, income level does not really matter, because I know a lot of Uber drivers doing blue collar jobs earning much better than a fresher engineer, probably 6 or 7 times. So 90,000, 1,20,000, when a fresher is still, looking at 15,000 to 25,000. So that is the irony of it all. And I'm sure formal definitions would be different. And in a state like Kerala, I think I echo the sentiments of colleagues here who said perceptions matter a lot. And one good thing about the gig economy, whatever bad things we say, we also need to acknowledge the good things. Flexibility, lack of choice because of algorithmic task management being there, but still a certain sense or an illusion of choice, whether, hey, do you want to pick up a ride or a job today or not? That choice is there. So that distinction. So somebody going as a clerk or a lower tier job in Kerala, a place like Kerala, might be looked down upon. But at the same time, if you go through an anonymized platform, it might not be as problematic. So that way, that's a good thing.
All right, thank you. I was looking more not from a money earning capacity, I was looking more from a perspective of how technology or other enablement has uplifted their ability to perform high-end jobs. So I feel that way, I think it is improving, right? But the interesting point is perception still holds that back to a great extent. I fondly remember some 20...
I don't think we'll get our daughters married to a plumber, electrician, fitter even today. And till we get there, I think the perception is a problem.
Yeah, I understand. I know it is time for us to wind up and move into the next session. I really wanted to take the opportunity to thank each one of you. There are a few more questions that I have, but if they permit, within 30 seconds, can you just give me or give the audience a perspective? Is gig economy going to stay and grow for India?
It is going to stay and grow for India because I think that ship has sailed. Technology has, moved ahead by leaps and bounds, and that's not going to change. Our challenge is how to manage that flexibility which it gives with the uncertainty.
The gig economy is definitely going to stay because the flexibility is addictive. So that's for sure. The only problem is the shelf life of a gig worker is very small. So, and we're on the first branch of that. So the next 10 years will show how the current gig workers survive and what happens to the retirement plans.
Okay, that's it.
As employers, we always struggle to get the right set of talent. But if the gig workforce can give us that talent and the skills, why not just ensure that they have a safety net and they grow along with the company? That's what I would say.
Okay, that's it.
Gig economy is going to stay, it's going to grow, and it's going to create a lot more questions and problems that we have to solve, and we should all come together and figure it out. And in specific context of Kerala or any socialist leaning, normative economy, I think we need to move away from the wage employment model and somehow create a channel for upskilling. Without upskilling, Gita, very poetically puts it, but without the weapon in your hand, you are just going to be, overtaken or replaced either by a better, younger individual or a faster machine. So I think we need to probably address how to upskill and create a channel for that.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, even though it is a small audience, thank you all for a very patient listening. I think the crux of the message is, this is a new stream of economic activity, new stream of job. It is going to stay, it is going to grow, but I think we are a long way from making it a stable stream like the regular employment. That's the most popular voting if I were to look at here. Thanks once again, and thank you, organizers.